Well, hello and welcome. Click Spotlight. My name's John Sands. We're at Connections and we have the very great pleasure of three people in front of me today. Now, this is Spotlight is about data literacy and you're part of the panel and you just had the discussion around the panel. But quickly before we go on, just in case anyone, of course, I'm sure everyone knows you, but a very quick sentence on who you are.
Well, I'm Alan Schwarz. For 10 years, I was an investigative reporter at the New York Times who was known for looking at data, telling stories with data, holding industries that misuse data accountable, whether it was the National Football League and its cover-up of head injuries among retired players, or big pharma, whatnot. I left the Times about 3 years ago and recently started my own consulting company to help companies and industries avoid the types of troubles that I was sort of exposing at the time.
So stopping it off at the source.
Exactly. We're in crisis deterrence. So that's what I do now.
Excellent. Chantilly.
Chantilly Jaggernauth, founder and CEO of Millennials in Data, and working with educational systems, so all in academia as well as organizations to help them upskill their millennials.
Oh, okay, excellent. Thank you, Chantilly. Ben.
And I'm Ben, Ben Jones. I'm the founder of dataliteracy.com, and so I help organizations and as well as individuals help overcome some of their data gaps, and that could be in the form of training or educational resources. I was formerly at Tableau Software, where I led the Tableau public platform, and I got to work with journalists all over the world to help tell the stories of our time with data with that platform. So, and also teach at the University of Washington, which I think is where I really kind of solidified my bug of just wanting to teach and train people.
Excellent, excellent. So you've just come off a panel discussion, haven't you? And data literacy is very much in the forefront at Click, and I think generally across, it should be more so. But it's definitely a growing movement. But so Chantilly, this is to you, how do you define data literacy?
I define it as the ability for one to read, write, understand, think critically about data, being able to question it, understand bias when it's introduced as well. So just having an overall understanding of data, visualizing with data, communicating with data, just everything data, just understanding it.
So Chantilly there was talking about bias. How do you what do you define bias as far as data?
Why are you looking at me? Well, I think we're human.
Yeah.
Everybody working with data. I remember the executive editor at the New York Times when there would be criticism. Well, I worked there. What can I tell you? This guy worked at Tableau. But he said, whenever there were times when the paper would be accused of bias here and favoritism there, he would say, newspapers are made by human beings. And I think that data is interpreted by human beings. We all like to think that we're right. That's why there's confirmation bias, selection bias, all these biases that exist, whether formal or informal. We're human, and there's a lot of people get very emotional about data. You think of it as this cold stuff.
Of course, yes.
And it's not. It has meaning, and it resonates, and it hurts, and people are going to draw upon or become, slaves to their own humanity as they have it affect their lives.
I mean, there's some awful figures around on the people that give lip service to data literacy, but don't actually, go through with that. So it's a good idea, but they're not investing, are they? Ben, why is that? I mean, because one of the things I was reading about was the fact that, they think it's a good idea, but they won't actually employ someone or pay someone more because if they're a data literate or have that as a skill. Why do you think that is?
I think they're investing in experts. Companies want to have people who are highly skilled in data. I think the problem is that they're realizing that they're not investing in the rest of the non-data expert population within a company to also become, capable. And that's not something I think that's been baked into their budgets up until now. I think it's something they're having to kind of try to account for and realizing that this is affecting every single person at every level of the organization. And that's something I think they're just waking up to now. So I think there's a gap there, and it's going to take time, and it's going to take budget. and they have to really focus on that as a message and an area of emphasis across the organization. And there's a lot of other things vying for the same kind of
same
attention.
dollars. Yeah,
Exactly.
Well, of course, it's very easy to give a man a fish, but teaching him to fish is a whole other thing. And I think that, frankly, companies will hire consultants like me to help them make sure that their data is not misinterpreted. It is not handled illiterately, if you will. But they're not going to teach their own people how to do what I do and what we can do, because it's easier not to. Who are we kidding?
Yeah, of course.
And they're also not in the education business. Unfortunately, I mean, you want to invest in your people and whatnot, teach them skills, but then again, you know, they hired you to do a job, and you're supposed to already know how to do it.
And that's the whole thing about being found out as well. That sits in with there. You don't want to appear to be someone who's not doing that. So, Chantilly, let's say you are working in an organisation and you spot it as an individual that, you know, maybe I want to push myself for this. I want to, you know, make myself better because I can't rely on my manager or whatever. What steps do individuals can take to make themselves more data literate?
So just like individuals take particular steps to climb a corporate ladder per se, they meet with who they need to meet with, they get on the projects that they need to get on. I feel like individuals should take that same approach as far as learning about data. So taking trainings on their own, investing in their own career development, asking the question why whenever they're presented with like a new data set or a new visualization. So always questioning why, thinking critically about it, and just really wanting to develop yourself. So I think a person just needs to want to do it first and then take the steps and figure out how to.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So if there are two sort of types of people, there are people who think they can do math and people who say, I hate math and can't do math.
Yeah.
Okay. So what can somebody who is confident enough with their math skills do, and what would need to be different for somebody who's like, I don't know anything about math, but I better learn about this?
I think the person that is confident about math should be a champion for math and seek out the individuals who aren't confident about it, because that's literally what I was in college. So I was very good in math, but then I had individuals and peers who weren't good at it, and I would seek out my friends because I want us all to succeed. I love math, so I want everybody to love math kind of the same way that I do. So I would seek out those individuals and teach them some of the basic things to help them get started, and once they got the hang of it, then they would take their own journey and do the things that they needed to do to succeed or continue to succeed in math, or in this case, data.
So it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's one of these things, isn't it? You know, the more people that get educated, then the more people will see that's the case, and then but it's getting that started. So what's the potential across industry and society of an inclusivity conscious data literate population then? Yeah, I'll pose that to Ben.
Can you repeat that one more time? That was
I was really
heavy
as
one.
well.
That was a heavy one.
It's a terrible way to ask a question, but I would do it. What is the potential across industry and society of an inclusivity conscious data literate population?
Yeah, so if you have a data literate population, they're able to solve problems together. They have a common language to understand the nature of problems and seek to find solutions for that. So whether that's helping a company grow and become bigger, or helping us deal with, you know, potentially a pandemic or a global, you know, type of a threat. I think those are things that, you know, to the degree that we don't agree on the math, how are we able to come together and solve problems? So that's, I think, the negative side of it. And the positive side of it is we've seen great examples of populations of people coming together and using data to be able to, you know, put a person on the moon. Or, I mean, we've achieved great things with math and engineering, and I think also working with data, empirical data, is something that's combined into that entire equation. So I think we've shown ourselves in the last century we're capable of great things, and we're also capable of really botching it badly.
Yeah.
Well, and I do think that one of the great failures of data literacy, or triumphs of data illiteracy of our time, is the whole vaccination business.
Yeah.
Where not only did a fraudulent study put it into, if you will, America's bloodstream, but these knuckleheads on television who say, well, my kid, or I know somebody, which is another good one. I know somebody whose kid got vaccinated and now he has autism. And I mean, Jenny McCarthy, of all people, is going around talking about how, well, my kid got vaccinated, and now he's autistic, and that's my proof. That's my evidence. And where are the people who say, shut up?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because kids are dying
Mm-hmm.
because of this data illiteracy.
Mm.
And I would like to see us demand better.
But this is when you put emotion around data, isn't it? You made a very good point early on about, we see data as very cold, black thing that we store in databases and whatever, but there is so much more than that. You look at some of the work that we've done with We See Hope, Hope HIV, MedAir, where they're using data to find out where all the evacuees are, and so they can better give aid out there.
Right.
Do you have any other examples of where data is supporting our society and making it a better place? You gave one there when it made it a worse place because we didn't use data properly. What about when it's actually helped?
I think there was a big one, the end malaria that's going on.
Yeah, visualizing malaria.
Visualizing malaria. Bill Gates Foundation is working
I
on
see.
that as well, and they're using data. Do you know the context of that one?
Yeah, so PATH is working with some consultants to be able to understand where malaria outbreaks are occurring in the country of Zambia and be able to divert resources to help address them in a timely fashion. And so they have a pretty ambitious goal to eliminate malaria altogether in the country, or at least deaths from it. So I believe they've seen some like 90% reduction in the rates that have been experienced in that, at least in that country. So we've shown that we can do some pretty amazing things with data, and I'd like to see more of that. I think that's great when we see all these data skills we build in these companies we work for transitioning to being able to helping us solve major problems that is causing suffering of sentient beings on the planet.
Yeah.
To the degree that we can do that, I think we're actually making good use of all these skills we're building and this amazing software that we continue to develop and evolve to be more and more feature rich. So why not actually use it to help people in our own
Absolutely.
backyards and across the world, really? So yeah.
Okay. So Alan, go on. Sorry, please.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things I want to bring to this is that I don't think that we've somehow crossed the border into an age of data. Okay, because or data analysis. Human beings have been using data for, and let's call data numbers for the moment, okay? Quantification of stuff.
Yeah.
We've been using data forever. I mean, the Egyptians used data. When we talk about all the things we're able to do now because of data manipulation and these tools, I mean, the electronic calculator was, just a mind-blowing invention that allowed us to do so many other things. I went to school at the University of Pennsylvania and got to see the ENIAC, right there on campus.
Yeah.
The Babbage machine, all of these things that have, when you talk about the malaria thing, I mean, polio was we've got the vaccine for polio because of data and because of analyzing it with the tools that were available then. And so maybe the words we need to use are, modern, sophisticated data tools, or, whatnot, because I got to tell you, we're going to have something better 10 years from now.
Totally. I mean, I see what you're saying, and I don't disagree, but at the same time, I think there's this phrase, right, the change in scale is a change in kind. And I think what's different about now than those times you mentioned, like, for example, when Jonas Salk was solving the polio dilemma that obviously was ravaging his generation, is that now you literally have people in every industry, in every department, at every level of every department, HR, finance, operations, every single one of them almost now having to not just interact with visual complex dashboards, but even in many, many cases, make sense of spreadsheets that are in their hands, and they did not get educated in their formal education to do that. And I think that that's maybe what's different about our time. And so it's causing maybe more of a dialogue, more of a focus on it. But
yeah, I mean, our ability to, and I'm not the first person to say this, but our ability to generate data has far outstripped our ability to make any sense of it.
Yeah.
And so you just got all this sort of primordial ooze from which we need to, make some sense.
Good point. I mean, and just because we can doesn't mean we should. And I made a good analogy, as in take data.
Or just because we can doesn't mean we can.
Well, yeah, there is that as well. But I did an analogy on at home. I've got what I call a man drawer, and in that man drawer are batteries. Where very limited charge, and all the keys I should never chuck away, all the screws from IKEA furniture that I think I will need in the future.
You know how many hex screws I have?
I can only imagine. If it's like mine, they just. But you never have one when you really need one. So we are all this data that we're getting, but we're not thinking about why we should use it. And a lot of that time is because we don't truly understand what that data is. So we save it, and it's that chucking away thing, isn't it?
I heard a data ethicist that I really admire one time say, maybe the Hippocratic oath of data is, instead of do no harm, it's do not hoard. So we have companies just hoarding and hanging on to all of this data, much of which could be potentially, violating people's privacy rights, be used down the road for highly unethical things. So, that's kind of counterintuitive because companies say, well, storage is so cheap. Why would you not say that? Instead saying, well, and I think litigation regulation like, for example, GDPR is causing companies to rethink and say, well, maybe we should have a business reason that we can identify to make us decide to hang on to data, as opposed to just hanging on to everything that we could possibly get our hands on.
And data literacy, for me, I see it as being that if you understand it, you're more likely to know whether you should chuck it away or not, or whether you keep it. If you don't understand it, then you're going to have a data lake or data swamp or whatever it is that is doing it. So, okay, what's going to change people then? What do we need for people to not give lip service, but to actually say, yes, I'm going to be serious with this and I'm going to move forward and make this work? That's an open question. So, Chantilly, yes.
I actually think, I'll take it a step further, and I think it goes back to the educational system. I think that there needs to be a change in the educational system to where data is being introduced at an early age, and people are starting to understand, and students are starting to understand, and teachers, the value of data at an early age, so that when they do go on to their respective careers and jobs, they have that mindset, and the organization isn't spending the dollars to now upskill a new generation of analysts or whoever to use data. They're already aware and conscious of it.
So we need to get in there early then.
We need to get in there really early. So I don't even think it's on the organizations. I think it's on the organizations once they've already transitioned into it, but I think it goes way beyond that, back to the educational system. Alan made a point that, data was used back in polio when they were looking at polio. But if we think about that, education hasn't changed at all.
No.
Very rarely. The educational system has not changed. I mentioned earlier that the current educational system, or someone once told me, the current educational system is still based off of your average factory worker.
Yeah.
Doing and learning what needs to be done so that you can work in a factory.
Yeah, that's great. Alan, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think that illustrations of data literacy's importance, or the botching of it, frankly, or the cost of data illiteracy, I think those are things that will help inspire and help educate people, show when it really mattered and did a lot of good, and show when people not understanding it, whether it's the vaccination thing or who knows what. The polling in 2016, okay, so many people don't understand what happened there. And the people who said that Clinton had an 83% chance of winning were not wrong just because Trump won.
No.
Something has an 83% chance of happening. Sometimes it's not going to happen.
That's 70% there.
Like they were, so we're in an age now where people demand answers right now, definitive answers. And I think the more illustrations we put out there to show when it matters, how it mattered, one way or the other, and frankly celebrate the people who did it well. Hidden Figures, it's wonderful. Maybe have a Hall of Fame of data literacy, or the timeline of data literacy.
You could shame the ones at the bottom and carrot and stick.
Hey, it's time I come from a media world where, you beat people over the head with stuff. It's not particularly subtle.
No.
And, okay, I just feel like it's the illustrations and humanizing it.
Yeah.
Data, I always say, when I used data in journalism, I would say that what numbers lack in nuance, they more than make up for in clarity. It's very powerful.
Yeah.
The thing is that numbers are people. Most of the time, numbers are people. And if we can humanize how the data is going to help them, hopefully, I think that will go a long way to getting people to care.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a different take on it. I mean, I love the idea of shining the spotlight on examples of problems that have occurred. I think the problem with like the beating over the head or shaming kind of ideologies, that can lead people to cover up their mistakes, that can lead people to shy away from wanting to do it at all in the first place. So I think we kind of need to have, and maybe it's a little idealistic to think we can, but I'd like to think that there's a way you can say, well, let's create a climate where if you make a mistake, it's okay as long as you admit it.
Oh, yeah. I'm talking about fraud.
Sure.
I'm talking about such incompetence or arrogance on the part of a politician or a scientist or whoever it may be, where because they didn't understand something, I mean more, something where, hey, this person didn't know how to drive at night and they drove into a tree. Maybe we should teach people how to drive at night.
I've seen a lot in the data world that there can be sort of a critical mindset of sort of ridiculing someone who does something that you think is maybe breaking some unalterable etched in stone law, like making a pie chart with more than 10 slices or whatever, fill in the blank rule that you think should never, ever, ever be violated. So I think what that causes is this just general, that's more my point of view about it. I agree if someone's out there trying to purposefully deceive or manipulate or whatnot, then there needs to be a different conversation there. But it's just so easy actually to get it wrong. Even experts have a difficult time explaining pretty common concepts like what a p-value is. Even someone like myself who's been working with data many, many years, I catch myself making mistakes, analytical mistakes all the time, very, very common. I think even people who are just new and starting, this is okay. This is going to happen. You're going to trip up. You're going to find yourself at the bottom of a pitfall and, put a little notch on a tick sheet of the kind of mistake you made and maybe give some thought to why you didn't see it coming, but also like have a conversation about it and actually be able to.
And that's a good point, talking about it.
Yeah.
And that's the way it works. If we don't talk about it, then nothing's going to happen. So yes.
I think it becomes an immune system kind of a thing, right? Like the more we have the ability to have these conversations and, I see what they did and they were talking about it. I realize that now. And so maybe I'm less likely to make that kind of mistake down the road. So we're the first generation that's actually working with data to this degree, with this amount of scale and scope. And even if you think back the last 50 years, I mean, that's a relatively tiny percentage of our species on this planet. So I think we have a chance to build an immune system for the next generations and how to work with data. But it has to involve, knowing we can make a mistake, and if we do, that we can kind of have a process to.
It's funny, isn't it? Because you were right about this whole, if a scientist or someone to that MMR that you were talking about, the vaccinations, that has to be highlighted. But you're right, and the everyday person will need to learn and will not want to be frightened of learning.
Right.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'm just talking, honestly, it's to inspire people to say, wow, it really is important for me to understand this stuff as a citizen. Okay, so that I can, watch as people, usually politicians, try to snow me. When Scott Walker, the governor of Wisconsin, in 2011, the unemployment numbers came out. And the nation as a whole had added 18,000 jobs, which, is great. And Wisconsin had added 10,000 jobs. And so he boasted that Wisconsin had more than half of the created jobs in the country this month, which is totally wrong because lots of states lost jobs and there were 5 states who had more than 10,000. That kind of stuff. I would love it. I know it's a pipe dream, but I would love it if more citizens were like, are you delusional? Or journalists who could say, no, that's preposterous, and not put it in the paper.
Yeah, so that's worldwide. So we're talking about getting people data literate and wanting them to learn more on how to become. And you spoke, Chantilly, about the fact, the schools need to be doing it. But that's going to be a long way down the line, isn't it? To change the education system, is not going to happen quickly. What if I want to do this now? I'm sitting here and I want to learn more and I want to become more data literate. What can I do today?
Question everything. I would say if you want to become more data literate today, one, try to find data, how you use data in your everyday life. So whether you're walking and you're tracking your steps, whether you're counting calories, and then try to understand the data that you use in your everyday life. Try to analyze that data and see what else you can do with that data. I would say that's like a really good start. Find something that you are already doing, maybe not even thinking that knowing that you're doing, and then see how you can analyze and understand it even more.
What I love about that too is, it's one thing if you take a training course and they have some fun little fake training data for you to download and play with. We have all done that, and that's great. You learn a few steps and whatnot, but I don't know how much you retain it unless you use those steps and techniques on something that actually matters to you.
Yeah.
That's where it really sticks. So
I think what I would recommend is, in this digital age and whatnot, arguably the most analog thing we've done as a species in the last 600 years is read a book. Read.
Is there books
Jordan,
out there for that kind of thing?
There are, and you can actually carry them around and stuff. It's so convenient.
Are they paper?
They are made of dead trees.
Really?
It's remarkable.
Do they do that still?
They do. So it comes. But in all seriousness, read John Allen Paulos. Read Jordan Ellenberg. There's a great book, Math on Trial, about math in the law and all the, the prosecutor's fallacy and various ways in which we have botched, generally have botched probability and whatnot.
Yep.
And so there are books out there, very popular, very readable books. It's non-technical, but that will introduce you, I think, to the concept of how randomness, for example, exists, and what data to interpret as just stuff happens, or this is meaningful.
That's a skill, isn't it? That is a real skill to be able to do that.
Yeah, but I do think it's an instinct, and I think it's an instinct that was probably, instilled in us very early. I know that a lot of my work, the journalism that I did in understanding Bayesian probability or conditional probability, but the thing is that was taught to me by my ninth grade math teacher Bayesian just networks, for fun.
Bayesian networks.
It was just for fun, and I loved it, and I think it's just a sense of questioning, as you said, if what you're seeing, what to attribute it to. If you sit down at a roulette table and 17 comes up twice in a row, are you going to think that's remarkable? Okay, fine, stuff happens. If it comes up another 2 times in a row after that, are you going to bet on 17 next? You're darn tootin' you are, because something's up.
Yeah.
And these are things that that we do as a species, I think, understand. Our ability to recognize patterns is what kept us alive.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so recognizing patterns in real life and understanding how, data concepts can help you interpret what they mean or what they don't mean, I think is something that people can draw upon in ways that they probably don't even realize.
So what would you say about the people that are like, I'm not going to go out and get a book or read? If you think of the Christian religion, the Christian religion, they say, read the Bible if you want to go to heaven, right? How many people actually read the Bible on a regular basis like they should if they
as complimentary as I've been to John Allen Paulos in my career, I don't think he wrote the Bible. Hi, John.
But I'm just saying, if you want to be data literate,
but the thing
read a book.
Well, I mean, books come in various
Yeah.
forms. You know, I mean, to many people, you know, this is a book. And so you can read, we all get content.
Yeah.
It might not be in analog form in a book, but you can read it on an iPad. I mean, all these things are available for you to metabolize.
Or maybe join a self-help group for data illiterates.
Yeah,
I say that half in jest, but
yeah.
is there something like that where people can either join an organisation or join something to learn about it, or is it a good idea?
Isn't that Comic-Con?
There are some really cool meetup groups out there that are in every town. They're free. There are people talking about data. Maybe if you don't want to read a book, you can hang out with people that are presenting it or talking about it. So yeah, there are some pretty cool. I call it. I don't know if it's a self-help group or if it's a recovery group, but it's definitely where you'll be surrounded by people who are trying to get better at this.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's interesting to know, actually.
The community forum as well.
Well,
that
of course,
just that just launched. Definitely go on that and join that and get into the discussion as well.
And that discussion will start it. Well, thank you, the three of you. That's been really, really interesting, and I've learned a lot. And I've been in data now I've been in data all my life, obviously, but at Click for 12 years, and I've done a lot in this time. So thank you for spending the time to speak to me and educating people on data literacy. It's very important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.